All right, good morning. Welcome to our channel. And man, that light is some kind of bright. I think we're going to adjust that real quick. All right, there we go. So, good morning again. We're going to do some updates for HUD, Section 8, Medicare, and a few others this morning for the 2026 year. Now, I've been racing around this morning trying to address more complicated matters with our cats that are acting naughty right now. And clearly, I've got 5 o'clock shadow, but that's the life of a cat owner. When you've got too many, you forget to do things like shave. So, all right, first starting, we're going to take a look at HUD's budget for the year. I mean, it's like, if you guys had met me 10 years ago, I was always well prepared and everything was ready to go. And now I look like a homeless person in half my videos. But that's what life will do to you the older you get. And that's on the days I should tell you, one time I kept going and I thought I was putting mousse in my hair and I kept putting shaving gel, 3 times before I discovered what I was doing wrong. So that's the life of a video creator, I suppose. So HUD funding. We're looking at enormous cuts for 2026, and those cuts across HUD mean a couple of things. One, they did a reduction of 90% of their employees. They sold off the building, and clearly they're renting an office at this point. So what's going to happen is a lot of fair house hearings are probably not going to happen in the near future. In other words, some things are going to be slipped under the rug because of that. Simply, there's not enough people to monitor federal programs at this point, and they're not really that laser focused on whether or not you're being fairly treated in housing. So we're looking at a 44% reduction for 2026. That's quite a bit. So as I had spoken other terms, to counterbalance this, they're looking at making a reduction in immigration and illegal aliens in the system. Many of you would argue that because of the way it's set up, it's an impossibility for an immigrant or an illegal alien to be in the system, but it's not quite true. There are lots of ways, including mixed use and mixed families, also qualifying under green card status and other undocumented statuses could permit this under emergency circumstances. So it does play out. Anytime you've got rules, there's ways to get around them. So 44% reduction, a shift to state-managed block grants, which failed miserably. And so the state is not going to assume the responsibility in terms of administrating federal programs, including Section 8 housing. However, what's going to happen is it's going to cost the state more. President Trump has decided that he is no longer in the industry of wanting to fund homeless programs or even housing to the greater extent. So beyond that, we should be fully laser focused on time limits and work requirements. That's coming up next. So let's go over that. The reason I've got a lot of printed sheets this morning, I didn't have time to memorize all this. Okay, I have enough to keep track of as it is. So those 18 to 61, you're going to have work requirements, and it will vary by state and county. Most of the work requirements will average at 20 to 30 hours, and you may or may not be able to utilize community service, your local library, whatever it may be. I would advise picking a simpler job if you're disabled, okay? The work requirements and, of course, the time limit of 2 years will be fully rolled out. And so once you exceed or you get to your 2-year point in utilizing a Section 8 program. And I want to make clear, it's not just a housing choice voucher. If you are in subsidies, you are in project-based housing, tenant-based housing, low-income housing, affordable housing, there are 2-year time limits, starting in 2026. So you're not excluded. Another thing I want to bring up is the connection to, again, immigrants and undocumented throughout the system. There's been a very big play in this field to reduce that amount and make it further where those that may be here legally under green card cannot use the system anymore. So the policy surrounding that, it looks like they're going to eliminate all types of housing from that. So if you are an immigrant and you don't have a green card, all other statuses will not be accepted, okay? Beyond that, we can take a look at State grant funded. So continuum of care programs, they've made a change to that as well. And that change is going to be effective 2026. It looks like they're only going to, since 87% of the money being spent for continuum of care programs, that includes permanent supportive housing, emergency housing vouchers, as well as, I think, rapid rehousing. So at present, 87% of the money issued by the feds for these three programs under continuum of care, what'll happen is they're only going to allow it at 30%. Okay. So roughly 70% of you that use permanent supportive housing will lose that starting in 2026. Also, they're going to implement work requirements and time limits on that as well. So you're going to see a massive reduction throughout the year. Okay. I never understood why 87% of the funding went to that, and I'm not confident that number is accurate because we would have a substantially bigger problem with homelessness throughout every state if that was the case. So I think there's a problem there with that part. Moving on from continual care programs, to drop another sheet. Looks like SNAP benefits, work requirements, and time limits. More of them. So whether you're if you're connected to Medicare, food stamps, Section 8, HUD, housing, all of it is going to be work requirements and time limits in 2026. And also, they're eliminating everybody but green card holders. If you have any immigration status in our country, you're not born legally here, you're out. That's the end of it. Okay. So, starting already in November 1st, it started to roll out. I will continue to roll out in 2026, meaning that if you are using food stamps and you are not a U.S. citizen or you don't have a green card, you're out. Okay. You'll have to roll it to Garden, I guess. So they're going to also implement, as I said before, work requirements and time limits, which may include community service. If you don't complete those things or you don't abide by those rules, and you're from another person in another country or area, and you decide you want to live in the U.S., you can also expect a 5-year ban from the system. So if you're an immigrant or have an illegal status, any way that you find your way into food stamps, there's a 5-year bar. In other words, you cannot even use these food stamps until you have possessed that green card or lived in the U.S. for 5 years minimum. Okay. So there's no sense in traveling to the U.S. Unless you're willing to wait 5 years and then implement time limits and work requirements on top of everything else. So it's just not ideal at this point. Moving on from there, increased age limit. You're no longer going to get food stamps at 54, no matter what your status is going to be. According to the newest rules they're going to put in, the minimum buy-in is going to be, according to this, 18 to 64, up from 54. So food stamps would allow in certain states those to not have to do work requirements or time limits at 54. So across the board, it will now be 64 with or without status. Okay. They're going to be narrow, much more narrow caregiver exemptions. They'll be eliminated. They're going to eliminate all exceptions, and there will be a few of them for Native Americans, Alaskans, Indigenous, and tribal only. Okay. Otherwise, these rules could apply to you. Waiver criteria change, no. So you cannot simply roll in the food stamp office and say that you're having a mental meltdown or your physical disabilities are too great. They're not going to accept that as an answer. Funding and administration changes. They're moving SNAP from 50-50 federal to a split of 25-75. So 75% of it's got to be spent strictly on food stamps. That means that the vast majority of money issued or funded for those that require food stamps or SNAP benefits, mostly will have to go towards just that, nothing else, which will probably cause further funding shortages. Moving from there, Medicare. All right, so a little bit different rules here. Medicare is going to have a lot of changes for 2026. They're going to eliminate refugees, asylum recipients, people paroled in the U.S., survivors of trafficking and other crimes, survivor of domestic violence, people granted with withholding or deportation or removal. None of you guys are going to be able to utilize Medicare under those circumstances. The following groups lawfully present, green card holders, who are in a Medicaid waiting period can earn 100% of the poverty line. People paroled in the U.S. for less than a year, people temporary protected status, people with non-immigration visa, people who have applied for TNU visas, people granted employment authorization, family unity beneficiaries, and the list goes on. Look, if you're from another place, you can forget about it. Medicare is not going to. It's not going to be really a big option for you. Okay, the exceptions are very few. All right, so moving on from there, looks like we've got work requirements 18 to 61. So they did give you one break on a single year. Alternative activities, looks like you can do job training, the old workforce or training center. We all know how that goes down. Most of those training centers just pull people in like cattle, and they make you do job searches that lead to no jobs. So I don't know that if you're going to do community service, you might want to do it at a library where you don't have to be bothered with all the nonsense. Time limits, it's going to stand at 2 years for most of these programs. So there's a very clear message, I think, that the administration is making. If you want to utilize any taxpayer-funded programs, Medicare, food stamps, Section 8 housing, emergency programs, vouchers, subsidies, and affordable housing, there will be work requirements, time limits, no exemptions for aliens and immigrants, and there will be funding cuts as great as 44%. So that's the real message being sent here. I could read for days, you know. So that being said, while it's not perfectly exact, I think that does cover the gist of what's actually going to play out for our 2026 year. Now, with further funding cuts, I think that there is an opportunity for many of you to still be able to utilize these programs if you make the exemption. And of course, if they kicking this many people out, that means it makes room for many more. So there are some opportunities to be had. I'm going to jump into live chat real quick. Man, y'all missed it. I just about had a psychiatric breakdown. My yellow cat Pops decided to sit right on the desk and just go to town on me. And he knows exactly when I sit in this chair to make a video. You'll never hear another word out of his lips unless I go to make a video, and he goes crazy because he doesn't want me to do this. All right, Sheila, 7475, hello. Sheila Neal, another person. Good morning to all. The Houston guy. When are we going to get these politicians in there to the Light District? I have no idea. That Houston guy, 4239. There's pros and there's cons to this administration. Well, we still have 3+ years. You're correct. You know, the things that most of you guys are failing to see is this was kind of the warm-up party for all of this. You know, a lot of people are viewing 2025, these 11 months this administration's been in office, as okay, well, here's all the big things that are going to happen, and we're going to adjust for 2026. Well, President Trump is not done. This is only the beginning of what he's doing. Okay, it's going to get more serious next year. He's on a train and he's making a loop through all these systems. Okay, he is going after nearly every federal agency. Many of them he's cut in half, fired everybody, furloughed them. He will double back to all of this and he'll refine it in 2026. And this will continue as a process all the way through the end of the administration. What's left of anything at the end, I'm not sure. But the goal appears to be cutting the fat out of the system, draining the pond, as many would say. But some will be affected, some will not. If you weren't born in the U.S., you're likely to see the biggest changes. It means you're going to be shut out from just about everything. If you have a mixed household, both legally or immigrant, or legally immigrant and alien, not documented, then you'll likely lose most of your benefits legally, along with the rest. So it's a clearinghouse. Also, there are great fundamental changes to homelessness programs. And as the administration says, HUD is no longer in the business of paying for homeless programs. They don't want to do that anymore. So there's going to be a massive reduction to that program, 70%. So if you're in a position of homelessness and you're utilizing different permanent supportive housing, there are going to be big changes next year. And those are the beginning of them. And I think that, you know, in order to get rid of a system that doesn't work, because that's the goal here. A lot of you guys are taking this personal, but the goal here is first to collapse a system that doesn't work, because that's the goal here. A lot of these systems we have in place for food stamps, Section 8, housing authorities, and HUD, they have not worked very well for the past 50 to 80 years. So in order to get rid of all the things draining the money, you have to get, you have to shut this stuff down and restart with a new program. So what we're likely to see is the development of new programs to replace what's already here that operate more effectively and have more checks and balances in place. So while we will see a great reduction, probably in areas of food stamps and Section 8 housing, we'll see the system be fundamentally changed into something different and then rolled out, which will alleviate much of the stress that many of you guys that utilize the system. So I think that's the expectation here. Many of you are being very short-sighted. You're thinking, okay, well, this guy, the president's just cutting everything and that's going to be the end. It's not. The goal here is to collapse part of the system that doesn't work and inject it. And last night's video we discussed how much nonprofits had stole money basically for the homeless. So it's not that President Trump is interested in not so much funding homelessness. He's not interested in watching 90% of the budget be spent on nonprofits lining their pockets, okay? And that only 10% of the money actually address housing. He doesn't want to play that game. So in order to get rid of all these agencies that suck up all this money, he's simply going to bankrupt them. In terms of housing authorities, a very similar game will play out with that as well. He's cutting funding, and a lot of housing authorities will no longer willfully want to be in business because when we look back at the history of housing authorities and their relationship to federal funds, over half of all money issued gets sucked up by the housing authorities you guys deal with, and very little of that money actually is really spent on people actually getting a voucher and getting into housing. So the easiest way to collapse the center of the market is to cut all the funding, drive out all the people that are sucking all the money out of it, and then revisit it, come back around on the train, and then once you've got all the bad actors out of this and you thin the herd, you can create a new system that may work a little bit more effective with a lot more oversight. And so that's the step-by-step process that's playing out through almost every federal agency. We've been sitting on a lot of fat, and unfortunately, PHAs and nonprofits have been a real problem to federal funds. If we spent every dollar that was actually given to us by Uncle Sam actually on housing and actually putting food in the American mouth, then we would have already solved a lot of problems. But we can't. There's too many people with their hand in the cake box. Too many people. And the cake is so thin now that by the time the money trickles down to the people that need it, to the actual recipient, there isn't much left. And so President Trump doesn't want to play this game. So by virtue, these policies are really aimed at those agencies and nonprofits to bankrupt them and get them out of there. Sometimes the easiest way to take the tent down is knock down the poles. Now, clearly there's collateral damage because many of you need housing and this and that. But if we don't put the brakes on this, then it's going to continue to contribute to greater national debt and serve no purpose. Because it serves very little purpose or no purpose in some of these programs, there's no reason to continue on with it. I've told you guys in previous years and previous decades and videos that eventually we would see a new operable system put in place. And that's exactly what's playing out. He's gutting these systems, and the collateral is people that are utilizing food stamps and housing for 20, 30 years. It's okay to give a hand up, but we're not going to pay the rent of somebody that's willfully going to sit in Section 8 housing for 30 fucking years. If you can't find a job in 30 years, you've got a problem. Now, to mean what he says and prove that, he has not kicked out, the elderly and the home and the disabled. If you're disabled and you're 62 years and older, President Trump says he understands, and you're not going to be affected. The rest of able-bodied individuals, well, here's the boot camp. You can use the system, but you cannot use it for 30 years. You can utilize this, but you're going to have to kick back in. We're not a welfare state, and the problem extends further. That's why The second impact of all this was addressing immigrants legally here under different statuses and also those that were undocumented. He wants all these people out. If you've not contributed to the United States sufficiently, then you cannot use the U.S. taxpayer base or dollars to support you. So we're not running a soup kitchen anymore for the planet. You're welcome to the U.S., but there will be time limits for programs. And even if you have a green card, you can still be barred the first 5 years. We want to know whether or not you're actually going to contribute or kick in anything. And that's the view of this administration as well as Congress and your elected leaders. This is what you guys decided when you voted, that you wanted him to address this system and all federal systems as a practicality of business. And this business is flawed. We all knew that. You can't go, it's flawed, and then cry when somebody tries to fix it. And so, look, I'm a Section 8 consultant. My job was completely sympathized, but even I'm not foolish. I knew this whole thing was rigged. I'm glad it's being addressed. I'm sorry that it's going to affect so many so terribly the first year, but I think the fallout, once it's cleaned up, I think it's going to make a lot easier time to be able to administrate things like getting Medicaid, the cost of Medicaid, food stamps, and keep being able to utilize that if you need it. We're not in the business again of being a soup kitchen for the U.S. or immigrants. If you need help to get off your feet, that's fine. But we're not a welfare state, okay? A welfare state is when you take 30% of somebody's check, and then you provide everything else free because that's what they're paying. And that works in many countries as long as people pay it. We're the only country on the planet that does this crazy shit, We invite everybody in, and then, they know that from the minute they hit U.S. soil, that free housing, free food, free everything. Well, the problem is we're paying for that. You clock in, you clock out. We're all paying for this. So if you're going to use a system, you have to successfully show that you're either have contributed in the past or going to in the future contribute. Otherwise, you need to be disabled or 62 years and older. That's just a reality. You can't run a losing business, just like the U.S. Post Office. That's just a losing business. I'll be glad if they privatize that. I don't think anybody could run it worse than the government. So, but that's the reality. We're moving in a time and age when this country is in trillions in debt, and we got to cut the fat out. Okay, so it's not about hard feelings. It's about making good business decisions to help reduce debt and national debt. And even though food stamps, Section 8 housing, and other programs are not the bulk of what we spend, we'd be foolish not to address it. It's in your face. We need all Americans acting like Americans. You get out there, you work for a living, then you retire, and you enjoy living in the country. What we don't need is people sitting on a voucher, handing them down, willing them down for 30 years. People riding the food stamp deal for 20 years. There are plenty of jobs. Go get them. That's the administration's view of that. And being undocumented or whether you've got a status in the country does not entitle you to the U.S. coffers for money. It did, but now that's ended, and it's going to be made very plain and very clear in 2026. So I think as we roll into the early parts, probably January, February, March, we should start hearing about the plans for the following year and what's going to play out further in 2026. And I think that's when the curtain will reveal that there will be a massive fundamental change to how food stamps work altogether. Right now, we're just implementing old policies we've tested many times and it failed many times. So I think the redevelopment of how food stamps work and who get them, the redevelopment of Section 8 housing, homeless funding, all of these things are going to be revisited. And now that they've gutted that system to where that nobody can really bring it back to what it used to be, then a new system will go in place. Those that need it the most will actually be able to get it. The day and age, consultants like me will likely come to a sharp end because if the system works at least 80% of the time, then nobody really needs to consult on that merit. So, all right, moving back to comments real quick. We're going to get these politicians in there into Light District. Mr. Good morning, Jay and Chad. The Houston guy, there's pros and cons to administration. We still have 3+ years. That's correct. Good. Good morning, Jay, Kitty, crew, and chat. LL. So it's not just people with vouchers. It's a system-wide change, guys. Everything's changing. Look, in case anybody hasn't looked up at what they're doing, you're sitting at the desk, look up. We're approaching 2030. This is not 1989. It's not 1983. The fact that we're still doing business the same way as we did back in the 80s means that it's time to change these things. We've got AI coming out. They're dealing with robotics. Everything's moving forward. What's not moving forward is the old game of the food stamp and the voucher and housing and welfare. We've got to modernize these systems, okay? The population of our country and the population plan's getting bigger and bigger. This shit never worked to start with. And so we need to revisit it, gut what it is, and then create something that works in modern times. We're still hanging out with a pencil and a piece of paper with this stuff. A lot of this stuff can all be electronically connected, better verification and better oversight. That's what the administration is trying to achieve. He's trying to bring us into 2030. Pretty soon we'll be at 2050. And while the rest of the planet is sitting out here with electric cars and everything else that's new, we're still riding the coattails of shit that we did in the 80s with food stamps and welfare and housing. That's got to change. We can't continue to do this. It's just bad. So, yes, it plays a role, and clearly that we still need these services, but not the way they're currently done. There are too many people stealing from it. And I don't mean people that are wanting food stamps or housing. I mean the people that we put in charge to actually administrate this stuff. By the time the president makes an order, Congress approves it, it gets through HUD or it gets through the state, and then you get down to a nonprofit or a housing authority, they've stolen about 85% of the money, only 15% left. So what's the fucking point in running that? It's just a pyramid scheme. So the people that need it so we're just wasting fabulous amounts of money. We've allowed housing authorities and nonprofits to operate lawlessly for 50, 80 years. And now they've had almost a century to figure out how to squeeze out every dime and produce nothing for you. So though it's going to be painful for 2026, be glad that this administration wants to shut the shit down and eliminate the middlemen. That's what we need. That's going to work better. We've got to modernize this. And it's not going to happen with a bunch of presidents that are asleep, and we've had a lot of them, and they don't want to address this. It's a tough thing to deal with. At least Trump he's addressing it. He's gutting it. The future of 2026, 27, and 28 will be a lot of housing authorities disappearing, and many of these nonprofits will dry up because they can't milk the cow anymore. And that's good. They never did you very well anyways. Let me ask you a question, guys. Sit back and let's think very carefully, okay? While we're all crying, while a lot of people cry, oh, well, they're going to take my voucher or take my food stamps. Well, look, how fairly were you dealt with at the housing authority to start with? Half of them don't even talk to people properly. They don't answer the phones. And what they do offer, very little conversation. So the housing authority never did you that well. Food stamp, all of us, same thing, loaded game, big waste of time. But $200 in food stamps for most of you, they put you through so much bullshit, ain't even worth it. And so, yeah, it's time to end, 100-year-old system. This doesn't work. It worked back in the 40s, man. I mean, it doesn't work properly anymore. There are too many thieves involved. I wish in many ways the whole thing was under federal oversight, where there was a simple application process for housing, food stamps, and other things on qualification with a direct connection to IRS, where you can simply do it on a loan. You can get qualified like you do a loan, and then be done. But no, we have an antiquated system where we've got 15 different agencies that are going to suck money out of the money. Before it ever gets to this, while they have the loose change left, then you get your housing. And with food stamps, we've got politicians determining, if you can have a candy bar and energy drink, So rather than fix the larger problem, we're just articulating the little ones. So that's why all this shit needs to be gutted. And it is. And so the new system will probably be on a federal website, and that a lot of this will be streamlined. No more visits having to take off 11 weeks to sit in a line at the food stamp office at 4 o'clock in the fucking morning and then sit there and answer a bunch of ridiculous questions by a worker that really can't even stand you, or dealing with the housing authority where you've got prostitutes basically moonlighting as people that are your caseworker that talk to you like shit and don't return your calls and care less whether you have housing or not. You don't want that system to go? Y'all prefer to keep going? It can't get much worse. And so I think that's the appeal here. Look, you don't have to agree with President Trump. I'm not a fan of some things he does either. I've never really voted for anybody, or and first time he was in the office, I wasn't a big fan. This time, I'm an extreme fan of only one specific area. This man is willing to gut all the bullshit out of the federal system. If you give him long enough, he'll come back around and he'll hopefully fix this. And what I mean by fix is modernize. We cannot continue to operate housing and food stamps and Medicare based on what we did 80 years ago. There are too many people stealing. If it isn't the recipient stealing, then we've got the agency stealing. And so for every dollar that we pay out of your check, you get off of work at Popeyes on Friday, you cash your check minus 10-15% to the U.S. government that pays for this shit. And then that 15%, for every dollar spent, only 10% of it actually gets a person a voucher, because everybody along the line stole the money. So it'd be easier to collapse this. It'd be easier for us to be homeless and hungry for a year to have this modernized than to sit on the bullshit that we already have. And the work requirements is making one clear aim here. That's a clear message. We want to help, but we're not going to do this shit for 100 years. If you can't fucking figure out how to feed yourself after a couple of years, then you're in trouble. If you've got too many kids and it's time to consider contraceptives or male contraceptives, we cannot be a soup kitchen. Whether you're an immigrant, undocumented, or you're simply in the religious business of having babies, it is not the American public's responsibility to raise your fucking kids. Okay? I'm not working to feed a bunch of people. Okay? I'm working to feed me and mine. And so having people on food stamps for 30 years don't work unless you are a senior or disabled. A senior means I've worked all my life and now I have an entitlement. That entitlement means I am entitled to utilize what I've earned, which is the right or responsibility as an American citizen to be able to apply and receive food stamps after I've worked my ass off my whole life. That's why somebody 62 years and older can get this and nobody says shit about it. Because they worked their whole ass off the whole life. And the disabled, they can't even make a living in many cases. And thus, that is our moral and social responsibility. And though it may not be fun paying for it, we all must remember that, be glad you're not the one in the wheelchair. Outside of those two exceptions, then that's really not the American public's responsibility. We've got to get away from the shit that somehow the government owes you something. Okay? We pay taxes to be here and you're free. So, that's the message that's clear. Hell, I'm a section 8 consultant. I have defended the homeless and the hungry all my career. But let's be clear, there's a limit to this. Even I see that. You think anybody's giving me food stamps? Who you think feeds my cats? Me. Hell, I get out of bed, I've got pneumonia, messed up back. I still got to get up. I got no kids or wife. My cats expect me to feed them. And so we got to get away from this mentality of hand out. Hand up, baby. If you need help, that's what good American does. We lend hands to our neighbors and friends. That's fine. But nobody's trying to lend a hand for 30 years. So if that's your philosophy, then you're not really an American. Okay? You're doing something different, and you're not participating equally in this society. And if you're not disabled and a senior, you don't have no fucking excuse. So what I'm saying is it's okay to need help. That entitlement's there squarely and to the benefit of all Americans to contribute to the system. But we're not going to lend a hand for 30 years. Okay? That's just a lazy bastard. Now, I understand we're in a market of hyperinflation and inflation, and housing is unaffordable. So it's quite appropriate. If you're not wealthy and you can't afford housing, that's the case in many parts of the country. So it's quite appropriate as an American and taxpayer to ask for the hand, okay? But at some point, if you can't afford to live in California or you can't live in Florida without being on a voucher, then it's time to move to fucking Nebraska, okay? You get in your car and you move where it's affordable. Because no red-blooded American is going to continue to raise 40-year-old men and women that are unwilling to pay their own fucking rent, okay? Popeye's always hiring, okay? You might only be able to rent a cardboard box, but you're doing something. Even the prostitute spinning around the light making cash, okay? She's paying her rent. She's probably paying more at the hotel. So if I've got a prostitute spinning around the red light 180 times a day with a change cup, and she's getting along, then what the fuck are you doing? So that's where this stuff needs to end. I don't want to be ugly about this, but we've got to get back to reality. We're drowning in debt as a country, and then we've got about 15% of America don't do shit. Well, look, you grab a hoe, you get out in the field, maybe we have to create government bean pills. So there ain't no free ride out here. We are a company of capitalism. If you don't want to work, then work for yourself, then make your money that way. Even the fucking Mexicans understand that. Okay? You think they want to be out there roasting in 180-degree sun with a damn lawnmower? Probably not. But they're working. Okay? They're not standing. Most of them ain't standing at the food stand, Albus. So, look, we got to get right as a country. We need to think carefully about how we're producing what we're asking other Americans to do. You go pull out your change cup, walk through the neighborhood. Excuse me, I don't want to work. Incidentally, I had a problem, and I've had 13 children, so I would like a handout for every fucking house down the street. Okay? See how well that works up for you, because that's what's being asked in the American public. We've got to get it right. If your mom and your dad raised you right, then there are other options. Mexico has got applications open. They'll take you there. You can hang out with drug lords over there. Okay, we got to stop this shit. The system is not designed, on the pace we're going, we got 30% of America not doing a fucking thing. So I think that it's important to address the bull in the room. And here I am, it's my very job to do this stuff. And I'm arguing against it because I've watched this and even I recognize there's a problem. So yeah, I'm on the side of my seniors and my disabled. Just short of that, I don't know what to tell you. I think that anybody reaches my office, I'm okay with helping people if you need a hand up. And I understand it takes a couple of years. We live in a tougher country than we did in the 60s and 50s, right? So, yeah, you need a hand up a couple of years. Okay, we got you back. But we don't have you back 30 years, okay? To take the old metro down the street, sit over there at the food stamp office and turn that into your religion. No, we're good with that. You go get a job. If you need help, ask the church. There are other people. We can't continue to drain the system. And the big factor here, the bigger argument I'm trying to convey to most of you is these scams run by housing authorities and, in my opinion, these nonprofits. I don't mean the Baptist Church or the Catholic Church. I'm talking about all these nonprofits that fill their office with people that do absolutely nothing to actually help people get a job, to get housing. Okay, we'll invite you over to Our Lady of whatever it is, and we're going to help you fill out a Section 8 app. They ain't going to do shit, bitch. Don't even bother. So they're going to need $95 an hour for every employee. They'll have their SOBAs, all this shit. Nothing but waste. Meanwhile, the entire budget, billions, $500 billion gets sucked down the toilet every year, not to house or feed American people, but to enrich housing authorities and nonprofits. I want this shit to go away. I would rather have the FBI fucking running Section 8 than have a housing authority do it. Okay? I'd rather have the homeless run it. Okay? Because out of all the things I've seen, those two sets of organizations are the absolute worst. They have had 80 years of practice of sucking every fucking dollar out of this. Most of them don't ever achieve anything for people, and nobody needs somebody to walk out and do a head count of homeless to see if they're breathing when you offer nothing but just taking the money. So we're not really solving a housing crisis, are we? This is just a giant game to enrich specific people that own and run these organizations, and the rest of the people supposed to be getting services don't get shit. And that includes these places you guys love to donate to. Goodwill and the rest of them. There's no goodwill in that shit. You're accepting donations. You're selling everything of any value. And then you give the clothes with shit stains on it to the homeless. Okay? So all these charities, just like McDonald's, same thing with them. At the fucking window, you got a sign, please donate. Well, you're the McDonald's fucking corporation. Donate your own fucking money. Why are you soliciting me for money when you're the corporation? Take your own fucking money and donate. And while I don't think every nonprofit is bad, we've just got this all messed up. Everybody's wanting a handout. Please donate. But you're not achieving or producing any result. The only ones I see doing a good job is the church. The churches are picking up the slack and their members are paying for it. At least they're honest. You see? The rest are enriching themselves. So it's an unfortunate circumstance as the American public. We have to go through this, but we cannot continue to run an antiquated system. We cannot continue to run housing and food stamps on the system that was created in the 60s. Because back then, we would expect people to have a certain set of morals, right? People act a little bit better back in those days than they do today. Well, the world's changed. It's all about what you can get. Gimme, gimme, gimme. It's mine. I watch so much entitlement call my office every day. Every week, I get people call my office. Oh, we'd like to help our son and daughter-in-law. But look, we don't want that trash to live with us. So I see the ugliness of all this. It's only been now that I've gotten to the end of my career where I'm really voicing my concern, where I would have never done this through most of my career. But I see so much heartlessness and ugly. Yeah, we'll help them as long as you can keep them away from me. I've had families try to pay me to get rid of their homeless relatives. Okay? Court system dumping on me. Homeless shelters trying to dump it on our office. Oh, we love collecting big $1 million checks, but when it comes to really housing these pieces of shit, we don't want them. Could you, Mr. Lake, could you take about 120 of them? We just like counting our dollars. We like rolling on the bed like a hooker, counting $100 bills. We don't want to do shit for it, you know? And then the name of the homeless shelters, Our Lady of Mercy, right? There's no mercy in there. That's the fucking devil running. And then we go into gamuts of homeless shelters. You know, look. So almost all of them, if you look at their board reports, they are for profit. I mean, to the extreme. There's no vested interest in any humanity to love the most the homeless shelters. They put on a good little show. Okay. You ever see that little board of directors shows up in his LR 13,000 Benz? Go watch. He's up in the upper level management, you know, the one with the leather soap. These people don't give a shit. I have no faith in almost any of these things. Everywhere from Salvation Army to the rest of them, because they're all just a money game. They take the public's money, donations, they sell all the shit, they enrich themselves, and then I watch the same people not even be able to get a clean pair of clothes or housing, treating people like inmates. And we wonder why we can't get people off the street. We let shelters, nonprofits, and housing authorities completely fuck the American people. So if President Donald Trump wants to shut that shit down, I'm all for it. Okay? It doesn't mean I'd vote for him or not vote for him. I'm just saying if he wants to shut this shit down and bankrupt all these fuckers, then I'm good for that. I'm good for it. I'll put on my boots and support that any day of the week. So my hope and my goal for all of this, including this administration, whether I agree or disagree with policies, my only narrow focus is that they're going to rebuild the system. And it ain't going to fancy everybody, because we don't do the days and ages of handouts for 50 fucking years are over. The generational voucher, mama, she said she willed it down to the mama. Mama had 58 children. She willed it down to the children, and they ain't left the same property voucher or food stamp card 58 fucking years. Just rolling around. You know, they've collected everything. They got the food stamp card, the welfare card, the voucher card, the church card, the food bank card. You know, they're going to multiple, you know, their job is to get into Pinto and ride to every fucking food bank in town. That's not including whatever else they're doing. That shit's got to stop. This is a maddening cycle of crazy. And we're all fucking putting that. I go cash my check, the first thing I see on there, 10% to the homeless, 10% to the Section 8, another 15% here. But it's not to them. It's to the homeless shelter. It's to the housing authority. It's to all these agencies that steal it all. There's no way our country is spending $500 billion on all this stuff, but yet only 10% actually reaches the people that need to get it. It's all just being stolen. And anybody that can't see that's a fool. So I want this to go. I'm glad that HUD is now, we discussed that in a video, how installing political people as a leader of HUD over the last 50 years, where these leaders that directed HUD enrich themselves. Not the hardworking employees downstairs with the typewriters and phones. We're talking the people that all these presidents going way back install people, and they use millions and billions of dollars to create companies outside of HUD, and then they fed contracts to it and stole vast amounts of money. Vast amounts. It's like hiring a rodeo clown to run a HUD. And then the rodeo clown goes, hey, man, I'm in charge of approvals of contracts. So I'm going to set up ma, pa, uncle, aunt, uncle. They all got LLCs willing to sell the American public the screwing in of a light bulb, $984 for every light bulb screwed. For every homeless person we gave a roll of socks, that'd be $1,000. This is what's fucking acceptable. It's the largest U.S. scam that ever ran. And it doesn't actually help anybody. But we're so narrowly focused. Oh, well, I'm paying for the homeless bastard, the light, smoking crack. No, you're not. Most of your money's stolen from your check every fucking week is going to the housing authority, the nonprofits, and the homeless shelters, because we give them billions. And they run the homeless shelter like a prison. What happens when you run things like a prison? It means the prisoners, they absorb most of the money and only give just enough to keep these people alive. They house them, they feed them, but nothing more than is absolutely required. That's not why the U.S. government gave money. It was designed to help people get housing or be able to receive food, get on their feet, and go out and get these services. But instead of that actually happening, we're running homeless shelters and we're running housing authorities and nonprofits like prisons. We only give enough to keep them entangled. And so it further exasperates. And then we dump more money every year into this shit, and then they steal more. It's like, oh, this another party, 2026. Look, the president's going to give us more money we can fuck the American public out of. And then we'll turn around, absorb most of the money, and then we'll hand out dollar store slippers to all the homeless. And then they actually have the fucking nerve to act like they're good. And so it would be highly preferable that even the state ran the homeless shelters versus the religious organizations. And I want to make something clear about religion. There are those that serve God and those that build a church and serve the devil, okay? A lot of these homeless shelters based on religion, there's not an inch of God in that building or the people that run it. And so a lot of that shit, we need to defund it. It's an old practice. It's an old practice and Ponzi scheme. Indenturing the most vulnerable people in your shelter, forcing them into forced labor, all kinds of crazy shit. And the ending result of their visit is they don't even get housing, but yet you're stealing $20+ million a year. Some shelters have turned this business model so well, they're operating it like a corporation. And then these people sitting in shit-stained rags, donated, because all the good clothes were sold to line the pockets of their executives. They're walking into the building with $200-$300 shoes and suits. Okay, so driving up in the Benz, you got a homeless person playing the role of Jenkins, driving their fucking ass around. So no, this whole thing, capitalism on the back of homeless, that's the crime right there. Let's call it the way we see it. And all these donation centers, that's a joke. The homeless don't ever see any of that shit. How do I know that? I've been in these shelters. Before I had my career as a consultant in the quarter century, I spent 10 years on the street. I experienced a whole lot of shelters, donation centers, and I've seen the scam itself. I even got a whole director's report. She's talking about a long time ago. Nothing's changed. They're just better at stealing now. So don't tell me I didn't walk a mile in your shoes. I've been there. And then I topped it with this career. And because of my inside understanding and experience of over a decade, meaning that I was able to do my job better than almost any other consultant in this country because I understood it as a living practicality. I lived through it. So don't tell me it ain't true. It ain't real. It is real. I know all about it through multiple states. So, yeah, I walked in a mile in many of your shoes. I know Section 8, housing, vouchers, food stamps, all of it. And I also know the evils of it. And I know how we waste vast amounts of money. And I know that it doesn't actually benefit the people supposed to get it. But I also know there are many players. But the numbers are not big enough. The true waste of money is not on the players and hustlers that use this stuff in housing and food stamps. The biggest extravagant waste are the people that steal it first. And that starts the minute you turn it over to homeless shelters. And I don't mean all of them. There are some that still ethically operate, the ones that there's still a little bit of God and an angel in the building. But most of them, no. You know, you see this. We discussed San Francisco, Los Angeles. They've got more nonprofits than they do churches out there because everybody knows if you want to steal a lot of money and get the government, because the true homeless who were truly serving out of their check, all these nonprofits, all that shit needs to be shut down. The IRS really, really needs to audit this. I don't mean audit spending. I mean, it doesn't work. So to help me not probably get death threats, I will say this. There are some nonprofits, Catholic charities, kudos to you. I worked my entire career. I never found flaws in their system. Okay. So Catholic charities, you definitely, you have proven goodwill. Okay. But you've achieved something the most did not. The rest of these shams that buy up entire $1 million buildings, but yet the only thing you can offer a homeless person is a hot shower and talking to them like shit, all that needs to be closed. There are plenty of shams like in the city of Houston. I would shut down all these organizations out here. They're all worthless. And so are the people that run it. They're rotten to the core and don't care. And we're spending money for these people to have attitudes. So that's the truth. And you can't challenge the truth because I've already seen it, done it, been there. And here I am all these years later, quarter century later, and I'm talking about it. But I only really get to talk in any freedom because I'm up for retirement. So it doesn't matter what I say. You know, sue me if you wish, but we got to stop. Well, guys, I really enjoyed talking to you. And for those of you that don't enjoy profanity, it's tough shit. Things happen. We're all grown adults. I think that sometimes profanities convey the high intensity and the emotional state of what's going on. You're listening, you're watching, you're understanding. I believe that low-income people do need housing and they need help with assistance and food. I think that we need to solve both problems in a better way. One, no more hand-ups for 30 years. We'll get you on your feet. But if you don't get it after that, then you get off. Okay? If I leave you out there and you get a hand up for 3 years and you still if you still can't get your lazy ass down to the dollar store and get a job, then you starve. I take you back in the 20s and 30s in America. There wasn't that much food stamps and Section 8. When you didn't work, you didn't eat. Okay? When you didn't work, you lived on the sidewalk. Let's see how many Americans can stand doing that. So that's why we need this new system, and that's why we need to get rid of it. So I'm in 1,000% agreement with President Trump's changes, provided he continues on the path where we redevelop this to work and serve the disabled and the seniors, and that we service people that need a hand up. It means you've been out there working, you've had an incident, the hurricane then blew through, the tornado took your house, you need a hand up for a couple of years. But this is not a fucking vacation plan. And I do not support anybody that's going to come in the nation. You want to become an American citizen, kick in for about 10 years. Then we'll talk about a food stamp card. But we're not going to do handouts for 30 years. We're done with that game in this country. We cannot afford to continue to do it. The American public has expressed their opinion. Nobody's going to keep showing up for fucking work and paying taxes into something that's just clearly a big, fabulous waste of money. And that's the point, guys. I've enjoyed having a lot of you today. I'm going to address a few comments and we'll close this because I believe we're at the point where we need to stop. All right, Sheila, Mr. Mister, good morning. LL, good morning. Hopeless, good morning. Kim, ready for what is to come? I am too. Truth works. Clapping. Sheila, always love to hear you in the truth. Well, the most part of it is there are always sometimes inaccuracy. You can always call me on my bullshit. I don't mind. I'm more ashamed than my 5 o'clock shadow, but I wanted to make the video and I was more concerned about discussing reality than I am trying to come here and be an entertainer. Okay. My job as a consultant at the federal level is to show and make you understand, American public, what's going on. It's not for me to run out to Macy's and get a 3-piece suit and get my hair and nails done so I can talk like fucking Barbie in a video. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is that you understand what's happening, that you understand the realities of it and the changes coming. Not whether or not you're pleased with the dollar store shit in the background, whether you like how I look or you think I'm fat. I don't give a shit about that. That's not what the conversation is about. If you want entertainment, go to the theater. There are lots of people here with fidget spinner channels. You go visit them if you want the positive messages. You want a positive message? Go down to the church house, talk to Jesus. You want reality? You come here. That's what I spent my career doing. I don't please people. I'm not Amazon customer service. My job is to do the job and get it done, not to fucking please you. Sometimes I remind my own clients of that. Okay? This is not a satisfaction guarantee. You're not going to talk or treat me like Amazon representative. I will do the job for you, help you fix your crisis, but in no way are you going to indenture me and somehow dictate how or when I operate, period. You should be just grateful anybody gave enough shit to be able to want to help you navigate a system that cannot stand you or does not want you. And while that's brutal, look at the time that I've spent. And I cared. I genuinely care what happens to people. I care even more about them and their pets. Many of them call me, well, I'm going to be on the street with my cats and dogs. You know, you guys have many times left me in tears leaving a consult because I'm worried. I've got a 90-year-old woman in a car, and she's going to die freezing in there, and then her cats are going to be frozen. I'm going to go